Hey mathematicians, this is Mrs. Shopper coming to you with Chapter 2, Section 4, talking about deductive reasoning. So we've already talked about inductive reasoning and looking at patterns and making observations. Today we're going to talk about deductive reasoning and work through some pieces with that. What is deductive reasoning? Deductive reasoning uses facts, it uses rules, it uses definitions to create a conclusion. All right? When you look at deductive reasoning, it is facts, it is theorems, it is definitions. Inductive reasoning is based on patterns, what you observe, right? That's the difference between the two. If a statement is logistically correct, it is valid, all right? It is valid. So, and then just a reminder here, inductive reasoning again uses a series of observations. So the difference between inductive and deductive. Deductive uses facts, rules, definitions, properties, and inductive reason uses patterns. Pause the video as needed to make sure you get this information into your notes. So what we're going to do is look at two different examples and determine if they're inductive or deductive and talk about why. So when we're looking at these two examples, let's look at the first one. Macy's mother orders pizza for dinner every Thursday. Today is Thursday. Macy concludes that she will have pizza for dinner tonight. So we need to know if this is based on facts or if this is based on observations. And when we're looking at this, there is no rule, there is no law, there is no definition that you need to order pizza on Thursday. So Macy is making an observation. She recognizes that every Thursday she typically has pizza. So she's thinking, oh, tonight's Thursday, we're going to have pizza. That is inductive reasoning. It's based on a pattern that she's observing. The library charges 25 cents per day for an overdue book. Kyle returns a book that is 3 days overdue. He concludes that he'll be charged a 75-cent fine. This is based on fact. The library charges 25 cents per day. That's a fact. That's a rule. So for him to make a conclusion that with a 3-day-old book or overdue book, he pays, he's going to have to pay 75 cents, that would be based on, that's deductive reasoning because it's based on rules and facts. So inductive and deductive. Now, within deductive reasoning, we have the law of detachment and we have the law of syllogism. The law of detachment looks like this. If P, then Q, if this is a true statement, so if this piece is true, and we know that P is true, we can conclude that Q is also true. So how does this work? Here's my if-then statement. If a car is out of gas, then it will not start. That's my P, then Q. That's my if-then statement. Okay, so if a car is out of gas, it won't start. If my car is out of gas, I can make a valid conclusion that it's not going to start. That's the law of detachment. If I know that if my car does not have gas, then it won't start, and right now my car doesn't have gas, I can say it's not going to start. Okay? If I know that when it's 80 degrees, it won't snow, and I know that right now it's 80 degrees, which would be a dream, by the way. If right now is 80 degrees, I can conclude that it won't snow. If that's both true, and you're given a scenario where if the hypothesis is true, you can make a conclusion that Sarah's car won't start. All right, so law of detachment. We need to determine if the conclusion is valid based on the given information. If it's not, we have to explain why. If a figure is a square, so if P, then Q. If a figure is a square, then it's a parallelogram. The figure is a parallelogram. We can't make a valid, this is invalid. We can't make a valid conclusion because this part right here, rather, is not the hypothesis. It is not the if statement. So it is invalid because we don't know if that is true. All right, so if this part, your P, has to be this statement here, just like it was back here. The car is out of gas, then it will not start. Sarah's car is out of gas. This has to match. In this particular case, this is the Q, and we need it to be the P, the hypothesis. All right, so here's what we're going. So identify the hypothesis and the conclusion, which is what we did, the hypothesis and the conclusion, and then we have to analyze the conclusion. This conclusion this here, my apologies, is the hypothesis. We need the hypothesis to be here. Okay? That's the difference. Law of syllogism is a little bit different. This takes in 3 different items. So in the past one, it was car out of gas, and it was won't start. It was comparing two things. With the law of syllogism, we've got 3 different statements. If you get a job, then you'll earn money. If you earn money, then you'll buy a car. So we can make a valid conclusion that if you get a job, you will buy a car. For example, we could do another one. If you clean your room, then you get paid an allowance. If you get paid an allowance, then you can go to the movies. So if you clean your room, then you can go to the movies. Okay? If you go to practice, then you'll be able to compete. If you compete, you can make a big play. So if you go to practice, you'll make a big play. All right, looking at that statement. This has if P, then Q, if Q, then R, so then if P, then R. So the law of syllogism takes into effect 3 different statements. The law of detachment takes in 2 different statements. That's the difference between them. So let's draw a valid conclusion, if we can, from these statements. If your alarm goes off on time, then you'll have time to get ready for school. If you have time to get ready for school, you'll be on time for your bus. If P, then Q, if Q, then R. So that follows the pattern we need it to. So our valid conclusion is if your alarm goes off on time, you'll be on time for the bus. We can draw that valid conclusion. Not all sets of statements allow you to draw a valid conclusion. Again, it has to follow that pattern. If P, then Q. If Q, then R. If it doesn't follow that, you can't make a valid statement. So if you finish your geometry homework, P, you'll have time to hang out with your friends. If you eat dessert, or if you eat dinner, then you'll get dessert. Well, that's talking about 4 different pieces of information. For the law of syllogism, we need 3. For the law of detachment, we need 2. So we cannot create a valid solution or a valid conclusion from this statement. All right, determine whether each conclusion is valid based on the information. Okay, here we go. If a point is a midpoint of a segment, then it divides that segment into two congruent parts. We know that W is the midpoint of DC, which, okay, that's the midpoint of a segment. Then it's two congruent statements. Segment DW is congruent to WC. That is absolutely a valid conclusion. All right, we're talking about the midpoint and two congruent segments. We're given the midpoint, we're given two congruent statements. This absolutely is valid. If Randy goes to the gym, he will wear athletic socks. Randy is wearing athletic socks. Randy is at the gym. This one does not create a valid conclusion. It is invalid because it doesn't follow the pattern that we need. If P, then Q. This needs to say that Randy is at the gym. This one should then say that he's wearing athletic socks. With the law of detachment, if P, then Q, this statement has to be related to your hypothesis, not related to your conclusion. Therefore, this one is invalid. Therefore, it's invalid. How are we doing? This is a lot of information. I fully expect that you're going to have to maybe watch this again or review your notes, read through them. It's really important that you study and you prepare. Simply doing the assignments is not going to bring you as much success as you want. This is a 9th grade honors level course. You need to put in a little bit of different effort when you go through to prepare for this class, especially with all the vocab. All right, use the law of syllogism to draw a valid conclusion from each set of statements. If Jamal finishes his homework, then he will go out with his friends. If he goes out with his friends, then he will go to the movies. If P, then Q. If Q, then R. So we could say, if Jamal finishes his homework, he will go to the movies. All right. Let's look at one more here, and then we'll be good for today and let you have some practice. If you wear winter gloves, oops, P, not Q. If you wear winter gloves, then you'll have warm hands. If you don't have warm hands, that's inverse Q, then your gloves are too thin. All right, this one is not valid because it goes if P, then Q. It does not go if Q, then R. So this would be one that you cannot draw a valid conclusion because we're taking the inverse of that statement. So you're not creating a valid statement in this case. This one's invalid. All right. So work on your practice. If you've got questions, revisit this video one more time and then reach out to me. Let me know what you need. All right. Until next time.